This happened to me only a few nights ago. I live in a town that doesn't have much happen in it at all. You'll hear a news story here and there about someone robbing the local Walmart, but that's about it. You don't have to worry about break-ins or murders. My point is, it's a safe town, where anything scary or even paranormal is unheard of. That was until what happened to me recently. I was heading home from work after a very long shift. I worked the night shift, so I got back home at almost 2 a.m. It was pitch black out, with no one else on the roads. My home is a duplex that fits 2 units, the upstairs and the downstairs units. I live in the upstairs one, which means I need to go behind the house where a door is that contains a separate set of stairs leading right up to my door. After months of being lazy, I just started driving my car behind the house, which created a flat patch of grass I called my parking spot. The house was in a hidden residential area with 0 street lamps lighting up the road, so the only thing allowing me to see would be my front headlights. That night I pulled in and put my car into park. I turned myself towards my side passenger seat. I began gathering my things, my purse, my lunchbox. As I turned back to open my door, I froze. A few feet away from me, I could make out what I swear was a face. I couldn't tell if it was standing or crouching, but its head only stood as tall as my window. The face was paper white with black, round eyes. There were no ears or mouth on the face at all. The most terrifying part about it was its smile. Long, sharp yellow teeth with weird pieces of brown in it. I stared, completely frozen, with my hand still hovering over the handle of my car door. Seconds that felt more like minutes passed by, until finally the face just disappeared. I mean, it completely vanished in under a second. I couldn't see anything inside the blanket of darkness all around me, beside what my headlights illuminated in front of me. I chalked it up to my brain playing tricks on me from being so tired. I wish that was the truth, though. Quick rustling sounds from the overgrown plants beside me caused my head to snap in that direction. The figure dashed past my car and towards the direction of the door I needed to get to. It was so fast, yet I caught every detail I wish I never knew. It was small like a child, but looked nothing like one. All of its skin was inhumanly white. It looked severely malnourished with how much its bones were sticking out. It moved like an animal on all fours. I slowly pressed my back against my seat, just staring at where it had disappeared into, outside of where my headlights could reach. I couldn't even hear my own heavy breathing and barely contained sobs. I had never felt this way before, that paralyzing fear and pounding of my own heart. I was trapped. No one else was awake at the time. No one would answer their phones if I called them. No one would notice I'm still in my car with their blinds closed. I contemplated everything. Should I take a chance and run for my door? Should I turn my phone's flashlight on to see if it's still there? Should I honk my horn until my downstairs neighbor comes outside to investigate? No. Every scenario I felt like it was waiting for. It was waiting for me to make a move, to step outside the only protection I have against it. So I waited. Hours passed without me seeing it, but I didn't dare move or leave. After what felt like ages, the sun slowly started to rise. Once I could see everything around me, I observed all of it. The trees, the grass, my still closed door. It had to be gone now. It was so quiet, and there were few places it could hide without me seeing it stand out. Still, I didn't get out of my car. Not until I heard a few cars driving by on the road. That would mean some people were awake, going to their own work shifts. I bolted out, ran through the door and up the stairs. Turns out I was so loud with my running and slamming the door behind me, I scared my neighbor awake. I haven't told anyone what I saw. No one would believe me. They'd say I was so tired I probably hallucinated it, or it was just a stray dog running past. For the last few nights, I have not gone back after work. I drive to my parents, who live an hour away, and come back only when it's fully light out. Once my lease is up, I'll be leaving right away. I have no idea if it'll ever come back. The scariest part about the whole thing is that when I park my car, my door's automatically unlocked. The entire time it could have possibly opened any of my doors and gotten in. Whatever it was, a skinwalker, the rake, I hope to never encounter it again. Are you familiar with Nevada? It's one of those less iconic states, due in part to the huge stretches of desert and otherwise barren land between the urban developments. I'm not a resident, but I was traveling through it, returning to my place in Oregon. I was by myself at the time, driving up the US 95. It was around 8 or 9 at night, and it was October, so the sky was almost entirely dark by then. I never had an issue with driving at night. I don't scare too easily, and I enjoyed the peace and quiet. Being as young as I was, I didn't ration my gas too well. I knew the next rest stop must have been 15 or 20 miles down the road, and my tank was nearing empty. That's why I thought it was odd as I saw the lights and architecture of a gas station coming into view. As I neared it, I got a better look at it. It was unbranded, probably independent as so many rest stops are down here. The store was well lit, and it had a rectangular sign right out front that read only 24/7. I remember thinking how lucky I was, and being confused as to why I didn't see it on the map prior to the trip. Without much more thought, I entered the store. So a few things struck me as off about it. It was a normal gas station, and notably very clean inside. However, all the food items had legacy packaging. For example, Doritos. Remember when they had the old 70s styles bags that had a white upper half? All the bags in the store looked like that. It seemed like all the other snacks had older packaging too, and when I went over to the cooler to grab a water, so did all the drinks. To my dismay, I didn't see any water at all, only sodas and some milks. Begrudgingly, I grabbed a cola, which also had the nostalgic retro design. Carrying my beverage up to the counter, I was greeted by an older woman. I don't remember much about her, aside from the fact that she was entirely bald. She had a plastic rose pinned into her shirt. She looked at me questioningly as I put my drink on the table. She rung it up manually in her very outdated-looking register. Interestingly, I didn't see a card reader anywhere on the table. The register then displayed 10 cents in analog lettering. I was surprised as to how cheap the drink was, but didn't bother questioning her. Opening my wallet, I pulled out a $50 bill before putting it on the counter. "Put the rest on pump 1, please," I said with a smile. She picked up the bill, examining it under the light as if it was fake, before slowly placing it into the register. She said nothing more, only stared, as I picked up my soda and headed back outside. After figuring out the very weird pump design, I was able to fill up my car. I thought she added more than I paid for as the gas poured for a long time. Checking the readout in the car, it said the tank was nearly full, so I stopped pumping despite the gauge indicating I had a lot more gas left. Whatever, I thought. Guess the next person who would stop might get a free fill-up. I turned on my vehicle and pulled back onto the road. I must have been driving for 5 minutes when I randomly glanced back at my tank level. I was somehow empty again. I was confused and figured I must have misread the gas indicator as I was pumping my fuel, so I left, thinking my car was full when it wasn't. I made a U-turn heading back down the road in search of this rest stop I visited. After reaching the area where I thought it'd be, I was puzzled. There were no visible lights anywhere. I turned my high beams on, trying to get a better look around me, and that's when I saw it, revealed by a partially shattered window reflecting my car light back at me. I found the rest stop, or rather, what used to be the rest stop. Directly to my left was the gas station, but it wasn't the gas station I visited. This one was decrepit. The gas pumps were long gone, with only the overhang they were fixated to still remaining. The building itself had visible holes in the foundation, with all the windows smashed, some even missing entirely. The main front windows had wood boarded over them. As I looked at the place, my chest tightened. Something was very wrong here. I parked my car in front of the doors, leaving my lights on and getting out. As I got close, the building looked even worse. It was obviously ancient, and it probably hadn't seen a customer in decades. I approached the door and pulled on the rusted handle. It was locked. I tried the left side, and the door slowly opened, with a hair-splitting creak. Instinctively, I reached towards the light panel I remembered seeing on my way out. To my surprise, it was still there, confirming this was, in fact, the same building. Only one light, the one directly above the register, flickered on, with an audible buzzing sound. The single bulb cast a pale yellow around the room. In front of me lay scattered and trampled bags containing some of the snacks I saw before in 1970s-era packaging. The coolers and most of the shelves were gone. The counter, though, was still intact, as was the register. I approached it cautiously, not really knowing what to expect. Under the light, it was obvious a thick layer of dust covered everything, all except for one small item. A scarlet-red plastic rose sat in the exact middle of the counter, oriented so that the flower pointed away from me. I picked it up, realizing it was the same piece the woman working the register had been wearing as an accessory. As I touched it, I was overcome with a very strong feeling. It's hard to explain, but it's like when you listen to a masterfully composed, sad piece of music, and you're overcome with emotion. All the emotion the author poured into the song. This is what I felt as I touched the toy flower. I then thought I heard whispering, my instincts telling me to turn around, and I did. Of course, I saw nothing and no one. Strangely, though, the previously rusted door was swinging back and forth, as if someone had just bolted through it. After that, I left the gas station. Somehow, on my drive, my fuel gauge never got any lower than it was, and I was able to make it to the next real rest stop without any issues. To this day, I still can't wrap my head around the ordeal. I've never told anyone I know about it. I tried rationalizing it as a dream, but I know for a fact I was awake. It's hard to deny, especially because I still have the plastic rose. I took it from that counter, and I pinned it on my rearview mirror. Looking at it gives me an odd sense of peace or memorial. Again, it's hard to explain. I tried doing some research, but couldn't find any documentation about the strange rest stop online. I doubt I'll ever know for sure what happened, or who that woman was, but I suppose some things are better left to time. Good luck to any nighttime drivers out there, and stay safe. About a year ago in Great Falls, Montana, I was living in a camper with my boyfriend at the time. Let's call him Chris, along with my friend T. It was late at night and freezing cold as it was winter time. None of us could sleep and all our phones were dead. The camper had no power at the time. Chris and I decided we were going to go to the bank just right down the street from where the RV was parked, because they had these posts with outlets. When we got there, we plugged in our phones. As my phone was charging, I heard a really weird noise and started to look around. There was this tree at the edge of the woods about 3 feet away from us. Standing in the middle of this tree was a woman standing there, motionless, staring at me. Freaked out, I turned and whispered to Chris, "Do you see that woman by the tree?" He looked around for a moment and replied, "Oh, what woman? I don't see anyone." I froze for a second, then looked back at the tree. That woman was still there. I tried to take my eyes off of her. Looking up, I was surprised when I saw 2 branches on the left side, each with 6 babies, and the right side with 6 children. I looked around more and saw 16 more of these things. They were all in the distance, just staring at me. I looked over at a bench under a tree at the entrance of the bank, and I saw an elderly couple. I could tell they were one of these people, too. Once I saw them, I started to hear voices in different languages. I hurried to my phone and turned it on to Google Translate. I repeated what was said. From what I could gather, it seemed each person was recalling memories, telling stories of who they are, or perhaps who they were. I looked around again, but the people were now gone. It's like they disappeared. I told Chris that we needed to leave. As we grabbed our things and prepared to head back, I heard the voices pick up again. I thought to myself it made no sense, they can't be real. It's just in my head. But then I looked up, and I saw the woman again. She was in the tree and her mouth was curled into a big smile, with the whitest teeth I'd ever seen. I yelled, "Go away!" Chris looked at me weird. I told him we're leaving, now, and that we need to hurry up. I could feel that evil-looking smile drilling into the back of me. As Chris and I began to run, I heard them say something else, but my phone no longer had service, so I couldn't get it translated, not until we got back to the RV. Until then, I repeated what was said in my mind over and over so that I'd remember it. As soon as I got back, I got reception, so I repeated it into Google Translate. It just said, "Run." But there was something else, too. One other thing that Google Translate said meant, "Her smile, dangerous." I was freaked out, and I tried to brush it off. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to look out the window for something. I gave in, and I looked through the glass. I saw that old couple on the bench across the street. They'd followed me back, and I started to cry. I calmed down after a bit, and I looked out there again. They had disappeared, and luckily, I never saw them again. To this day, I won't go back to that bank at night, because that was the weirdest and creepiest thing I've ever experienced. The town this occurred in was more or less the size of a village. The encounter happened back in mid-October of 2016, as a friend and I were out deer hunting along the ridges north of Hector, Arkansas. We had several cattle deaths before the sighting, but we'd mainly chalked it up to coyotes, or coy dogs, roaming the property, as it was next to the Ozark WMA. This wasn't uncommon. Livestock deaths were expected during the fall, due to the high amount of predators in the area. My friend Levi, who was like a brother to me, and I had gotten out of classes early, so we rode out to the ridge that we call T Hill to check my family's cattle and maybe hunt some game that evening, if we saw anything. Usually the cattle would be grazing, and you could spot deer around the fence lines, which bordered the hardwood flats. Everything seemed normal that evening, except the cattle. They weren't in their normal area out on the top of the ridge. Instead, they were hiding in their lower thickets, watching a cow pace around one of the streams that trickled down the ridge. Now, these streams were never over 6 to 7 inches deep, and that was only if we had a downpour. I kept the cow at bay while Levi drove his ATV a little closer to the stream before waving me over. In the stream, there was maybe a 2 to 3 month old calf. It was dead. But it hadn't been mauled like it would have been if coyotes had killed it. We were very disappointed. Maybe it was too weak and had drowned in the shallow water of the stream. A few days later, we had the weekend off and went hunting along that ridge. Levi managed to harvest a good-sized deer, and I was helping him drag it out. This is when we saw it. This grayish-colored beast stood up from a bramble thicket in front of us, and it let out a low and deep rumble. Levi was 5'10", and I'm around 6'2", but this thing still had at least a foot in height over me. Instantly, we both grabbed our rifles and fired at it. The beast stumbled, then screamed. I swear I saw blood bubbling from its chest then. It didn't drop, though. Rather, the beast ran screaming through the brush and off through the ridgeline. "We're not tracking that dang thing," Levi said, as we hurriedly dragged his deer to the trail, then hastily loaded it on the ATV before peeling out of that area. Not long after this, we graduated, and I moved away. Levi and I talked about the event several times after, but we always chalked it up to a bear that we spooked. But that's not quite right. I remember the thing having a canine-like face as it rose, and black bears aren't gray.